Before we wander on into the episode, I just want to make sure that everyone goes out there and hits up the YouTube, check out the Spotify, check out Apple, wherever you're listening or watching to this podcast, is to go down, like it, subscribe, hit the bell if it's YouTube. Make sure you're getting those reminders. We do put these out every week. So make sure you do all that. It helps us out. And in the long run, we can make better things. So again, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
I recall one we were in, I won't give out where, but it was in the central western Wisconsin where we were hiking one night and we were on public and then crossed some private on
You're
a
gonna talk.
road.
You're gonna talk about this story.
Whenever we were coming downhill, we got to and these trucks showed up.
We could wander our way over, because this is Wandering Ways.
What's Bigfoot possibility?
Clink.
Clink. Hello, welcome. It is another wonderful Wednesday with Wandering Ways. I am the Reverend Mark, and with me is good old Ranger Zach. And we have a doozy today. It is not the lost files of Wandering Ways, but we were able to get our good friends at I Know Squatch to come back on and talk good old Bigfoot. So, hopefully maybe someday that lost episode will come about.
It'll be when we're like 90. And that new tech, right, that comes out then, that's like, recover files from long, long, long ago that were deleted. And it's like, someone does it to the Wandering Ways podcast and finds the old episodes that got deleted and we listen to them, and then you could compare them and contrast them. So to the listeners of 2100, we're older than 90 at this point, but 21, we welcome you to another episode of Wandering Ways, to a good episode. It's the I Know Squatch episode. And I honestly, truth be told, I'm going to whisper this in the microphone, but I like these guys a lot more than Matt, buddy.
You could say it out loud. Matt's not going to be listening.
Right? Oh, no, he doesn't report us the same way. No, he's a good guy, but I like the I Know Squatch guys. I love chatting it up about Bigfoot because, as the Wandering Ways podcast is, it's a part of who we are in a way. This guy wandering the woods looking for, just enjoyment. In reality,
100%.
Think of a Bigfoot's life, man. He's just enjoying it.
100%. So we got them back on the I Know Squatch crew. Make sure you check them out. They are fantastic. Check them out. Etsy, I Know Squatch. The link will be in the episode description. Check them out on Instagram, I Know Squatch. Check them out on Facebook, I Know Squatch. Rick's got a song out, Woodburger Walk. I'm going to try and play it a little bit right now. Alrighty, we got our good friends from I Know Squatch back on the podcast. I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna say it right off the get-go. This is all on me for losing that last interview we did. We talked about it on a previous podcast, how I screwed up and my computer just absolutely died on me. But it honestly was one of my favorite interviews that we've done for the podcast. That the fact that you guys are able to come back on again so soon so we can get it is just great, because man, I'm really kicking myself because there was a lot of great I have the notes from it written down, and there's a lot. I had like different time stamps for it, and I was like, oh, I can use this for a clip, I can use this for a clip on it, and it's just poof, it's gone. So I'm gonna come out and say that's all on me.
Well, we're glad to be back. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's exciting to be in 2023. I feel like everyone's like, let's hit the ground running in 2023. COVID's behind us, and let's do it. And I guess Mark's computer said, let's get a new one too, dude. Start refresh.
Yeah, must have. But Part of the big news for it came out last year because we talked about it on that last episode. But Rick, last time we talked, you had the Wood Booger Walk, a song that
Yeah.
came out. Hopefully, we play a little bit of it before the start of this interview in this episode. But it's a doozy. It's a good little song. So I mean, we loved hearing it. If you want to talk about your song, all that fun stuff, please do.
Yeah, wood booger. So we got some cool artwork with this too. But that's what it looks like. Hans does all of my artwork for my musical offerings. But yeah, you can find anybody can find me out on anywhere they listen to music, Amazon, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple. I'm out there under Just Rick. So that's me as an artist. But I guess I'm a recording artist. I play out all the time, gig all the time. Been doing it for years. But I did a Bigfoot song, and it's called Wood Booger Walk. Just released last month, and it's doing pretty darn good. I mean, a few different folks picked it up on TikTok, did some cool little videos with it. Last count about a week ago, I think I was up over 20,000 hits or views on that. So,
That's
people,
awesome.
it's fun to see what people do with it, and I'll tell you the inspiration for it. Well, I've been researching Bigfoot 12 years, and there just isn't any good Bigfoot songs. And I didn't want to call it Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And I'm an old blues rock, riff kind of guitar guy. I like the heavy metal thing a bit. So, I put a good, strong blues riff on it, and I had that in my head for a while. But all lyrics are written around kind of things that happen when you're around Bigfoot. So I talk about rocks being thrown and being zapped in the woods, and peeking around a tree and all that kind of stuff. These are real things, and there's a little comedy in it. The guy who's singing in the song is scared, but that real stuff happens out in the woods when you're out researching Bigfoot. So we got a great graphic on it. I was showing there just a minute. I had stickers made up. So when I do shows, I show people, but anybody goes online, you can see that on Spotify. It'll show up on your phone like that. So, it's cool. It's a nice thing to put together. I'm just surprised how well it's taken off. At Crypticon in November, I had just released it. They ran it up in Lexington. That was a big show, and they ran it in all their general sessions while they were introducing speakers and things. So we're having a lot of fun with it.
Nice. When I listened to it, I know I probably listened to it 2-3 times in a row because I was like, yeah, I like this beat. I like that. I mean, I like that bluegrassy feel. When I was living down in Cincinnati, that was something like when I would go into Kentucky, I'd always, what bluegrass radio station, AM frequency can we find? Because there's just something about that soul music, and then it really fits with Bigfoot as who Bigfoot is. And then you take that, when you're out in the woods looking for him and you hear these things, and there's even the noises that you kind of make with the guitar, the
Yeah.
beats. It's like you
Yep.
hear that stomping in the forest. Like, it's a cool song. I really enjoy it. I play it in my Jeep all the time with the subs, and I love it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it was a real smart choice to, use wood booger, because I think it's an underused term, and it's kind of funny, but it says a lot, rather than just Bigfoot,
Right. No, I think it does. It gives it that character that,
character.
he's more than just, a two-dimensional creature. He's a real life being. He's the wood booger.
Well, yeah, people they see it walking and moving around. Any of the videos you see, it's always moving. Sometimes quick, sometimes it's lumbering, but it's always walking or moving. When people see it, I know the first time I saw one of these things, it was walking across. So that comes into my head. The term wood booger, Hans's point is good, is kind of underused. It's kind of a little funny, but you see that all over the place. You see it on maps too. Wood booger holler and all these kind of things are on maps across the U.S., especially across the South. And you can't go back in there. There's the wood devils back in there, that kind of thing. And I use terms like that in the song. And I used a swampy blues riff, something that sounds like that with a big drum in it. And I brought in a musician that, I got musicians I brought in to do it. And one guy I brought, a great harmonica player, Mark Brown. He did a wonderful job in a harp, and he laid down all the slide, put some slide guitar on it too. So we really wanted to make it have that sound. So resonator, nice metal steel slide resonator sound in there. So it's pretty specific in what I wanted. And I'm pretty happy with the way it came out.
Yeah, it's definitely a full sound, it's very well produced as well.
No, that's good, especially when the artist comes out with like you're saying, it came out the way you wanted it. I mean,
Right.
I like it. Like I say, I play it. I know Mark plays it when he can.
Yeah, I play. I mean, most of the time I play it every once in a while. Most of the time when I'm listening to music, I'm working out or something. So, on those long runs, I'll mix up the beats and all the different tempos to force myself to run at a different kind of tempo. So, it adds a little character, especially if I am on like a trail run. Getting through listening to it, it's a little extra to it if I happen to catch the lyrics. Sometimes it's just the beat because I'm thinking about how hard I'm breathing instead of the words of a song. But the beat definitely helps, kind of even me out on a run, or speed me up depending on the song before. But other than the new song, I mean, have you guys gone out, done any kind of expeditions or like investigations into Bigfoot at all this past 2022?
Yeah, I'll start. Hans could jump in, but I led BFRO expedition last spring in the mountains of South Carolina. Just came off one in November. It was in Kentucky. A couple of weeks ago, I was up in the mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, again with a group of 8 of us. So I'm routinely out there and about. I try to do about 4 expeditions, either attend or be a part of every year, BFRO or otherwise. And I got a number of cases I'm investigating right now too, because I'm a BFRO investigator too, but doing that for about 7 years. Hans is also. But I got a number right now I'm into, and I kind of you see similarities in the way the Bigfoots interact or do things, but had some interesting things recently and had some interesting things happen in the woods recently that I'm glad to talk about a little.
Yeah, feel free. I mean, or
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to like the expeditions and stuff, I'm always super curious about the more of the planning of it, like how many people are on these like when you go out, how many days. Cuz from the few conversations we've had, it's not just like, hey, someone you meet in town says, "Hey, I saw, Bigfoot in the woods." And you're like, "All right, let's all go looking in the woods, with your pitchforks and torches. So
Yeah,
I,
that's good.
I'm curious about how the planning into these expeditions and all this goes into.
But Mark, yeah, that's good. I like the pitchforks and the torch. That's the old Frankenstein thing, right? They're going after
Yes.
Frankenstein, chase, get out of the village. But I'll start it, and Hans could jump in. He's been on lots of expeditions like I have. Heck, in fact, matter of fact, he and I met on a BFR expedition way back when we were tenting near each other in the campsite. But typically, what we do for an expedition is we're not throwing darts on a map. We're looking at the BFRO. If you go to bfro.net, you can right down to the county in any state see the vetted out, investigated witness reports, and you can see where they cluster on a map. And we'll start with that. We'll look in areas like that and see where there's been a lot of activity. And you typically go in those areas, and it's wildlife management areas, forests, state or federal forests, swamp areas, and we look for campsites around there, and then do some scouting. A typical expedition, and I've run a few of them, a good year or so worth of scouting, getting out into the areas every other week and seeing what the trails are like, where you can access or get around water, because these things are always around water. But that's the kind of stuff that goes into it on the front side. And then you got to, you'll put it out there and see the BFRO posts where the expeditions are going to be, and people will sign up. I was doing some interviews today for one that's coming up in Tennessee in the spring. So the investigators organizing it will interview the folks that want to attend and make sure they qualify, talk through what they're in for, and it goes from there. And then Hans, you've been on these. What happens typically when you get to an expedition?
yeah, no, Hans, if you could also, I just realized we haven't introduced you quite yet either,
Oh, that's
because
all right.
deleted that episode. So
Oh.
this feels so smooth already. And we were talking before the episode. So yeah, if you want to talk about, yeah, the expedition that like you guys met on and what these expeditions are like, but also introduce yourself here.
Oh, sure.
To
My
the
name is
family. Yeah.
my name is Hans, and I met Rick on a BFRO expedition up in the UP of Michigan, and going into the trip. At first, I was hesitant on, I was going to drive up 8 hours, and I was going up by myself, and I thought, who's going to be on these things, and what am I getting myself into? And when I pulled in to the campground, the guy said, "Hey, I you're from Wisconsin. I put you next to another guy from Wisconsin." So I pulled in, started setting up my tent, and there was Rick. And we just kind of walked over and introduced ourselves and started talking. And that's like the birth of the friendship, and then the brand, really that weekend, and then into the years afterwards. But I think, both his background and my background made for a good combination of, each bringing different talents to the table.
Yeah, and the nice thing was Hans and I, we got out at night, and some of the groups. You see, typically when you get there, the expedition leaders, there's an introduction, and then they put together groups for night hikes, and we go out into different areas, miles and miles apart often. And there's the groups run, say, 6 to 8 people, no more than that. That's manageable. And so Hans and I were out, I think, in the same group. And next day we decided to get out and do some scouting on our own for night ops the next night or two. And we really got into some areas that the expedition hadn't planned on going into, but we looked and said, we got to get into there. Those are some good areas. And lo and behold, they wound up being the areas of a lot of activity too. So we've been back to that place many times since. And I'll tell you, it was nuts, some of the things that happen. And when you go through experiences like that, where you have activity together, that's bonding for a long time.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's that. It's a shared experience when you go through that shared experience, and especially if it's your first time out and you experience something as crazy as, like, seeing Bigfoot. It's like, holy cats, the people you go through it with, you're gonna remember it, start remembering all the little details in that.
Yeah, that was so that was back in 2014, and that was when Finding Bigfoot was on TV, and that really, I had an interest in Squatch since I was a kid, and then all of a sudden that's on TV, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, there has to be some kind of group out there that would do something, because I'm not going to go out by myself. And sure enough, it was the BFRO. And I mean, the BFRO is one way to get out into the woods. There is an expense involved, but you can go out with your buddies. I mean, you can go out and just go camping, and then turn that camping trip into some night hikes and some day, looking around, scouting locations.
And I believe you did say the I Know Squatch brand, right? That's where you guys, that trip is where the name came from.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah, that was our shared experience on the second night, where we were. I mean, I can. It's weird because I've already told this story to this like captive audience right here. But it was lost. So we were out, and on in between two retention ponds on a bridge, and I mean, it was late at night, and we had been out hiking for 6-7 hours at that point. A few people in our group there. It started out as a group of 9. 3 left. It was kind of cold, and getting late. So there's a group of 6 of us, and we say we're like the Seni 6, out on this bridge, and we were seeing eye glow, pinpoints of light, you would describe it, from looking down a road. So we're on a bridge, and the road is made out of limestone, and this area is it's a refuge. So there's no traffic. I mean, it's way in the middle of nowhere. So, well, Rick, jump in at any time. Pinpoints of light on
Yeah. So yeah. So we it's kind of interesting because we scouted during the day and we thought it's a great area because as Han said, there's nothing there. It's wildlife refuge. I can't give you everything specific about it, but because we pretty much with the BFRO you don't. But just suffice it to say, tens of thousands of acres of wildlife refuge, middle of nowhere, in a county, and it's in Michigan, in a county that has a history of these things. It's one of the work that was done up front had to do with where these things were seen in that area over time a lot. So that's why the expedition was there. But we got into this area and immediately we got in, a lot of hiking, a lot of us going out. When you do these things, you're out a lot through the night, and you hike and you get around. But early on, we had stopped on this bridge and we did a knock, a real loud knock. We'll use a jam block, like from a drum kit, and bang on that. And we had a return howl, which is hundreds of yards away. But there was, a group of, I think 8 of us, we were just shocked, we couldn't believe it. I mean, immediately we had a return howl. And over the course of the night, a lot of different things happened. We got parallel in the woods. And as Han said, a few of the groups split off, but I think there was 5 or 6 of us returned back to this bridge where we had the original howl, and it was like game on. I mean, over the next couple hours, I recorded the entire thing. So I had the whole thing. So I was able to go back and listen to the entire thing, which is best practice on any expedition. You can hear, to Hans's point, you can hear 23 times in that hour and 40-minute recording where we in the group reference seeing either red or whitish yellow eye shine. And a couple of cases where the white was up at 7 foot in the air and the red was down below it, directly in front of it, and 2 sets of eyes looking at us. So it's what we later determined it to be was the parents standing behind the juveniles. But they were coming out of the woods on the other side of this. There was forest on the other side of this bridge and a small clearing to it. They were coming out of that and stepping and leaning out of the woods over the limestone road that Hans mentioned. You couldn't even see the road. There were so many of them. And this is going to sound crazy, and we were still kind of new to this, but we were trying to estimate how many there were because we're seeing shadows dart all over the place. And the number, exceeded 10. I mean, there were shadows and shadow movement things all over there over the course of this night. We saw eye shine repeatedly when we were exiting there. And I'll just, Hans, you can jump in, but when we were exiting there, we recorded them, talking to us as we were leaving, and they were kind of making a bark type of sound. I mean, it was crazy all that we had. So we went back the next day and checked it out, and we found footprints around the edge of the limestone. So we had all kinds of evidence here, multiple people seeing things. We recorded the sounds. The next day had visual proof. We saw footprints. So, that's like the trifecta.
I'll just say that I think, the area that we were in, being on, it's kind of like a long dike wall with a bridge. It actually created like a natural barrier between us and the deep, dark forest, which is a nice buffer zone for them to feel comfortable. And everyone talks about Squatch being a curious creature. So what we garnered from that night was that they were interested in us. Yeah, because we were standing on the bridge, basically having conversations like this, sharing stories and talking while still looking out into the woods, across the water to see the pinpoints of eyes. And the best part about the story is that it gets real late, and we're done, and we're gonna leave. And as a group of 6 of us, we had said, when we walk out of here, let's walk like halfway to the woods and then stop as a group and turn and look just to see if anything's there or following or what. So we did that, and we stopped, and we're standing there for, a minute, which can seem like an hour. We're standing there for a minute, and our buddy Matt yelled out, thank you and have a good night, kind of sing-songy a little bit. And on either side of the road, voice went off, and we kind of say it almost sounded Native American, or so a language that I can't replicate. And it was off going up and down, and then another one. So you can tell that there's two calls going off on either side. We did that process again 50 yards back, and they went off again. And then one of my favorite parts of that story was like, I looked to my right, and our buddy Mike, who is a woodsman through and through. I mean, he's a trapper, a hunter, an older guy. So he's seen everything. He had the biggest grin on his face. It was almost like giddy kind of dancing. And he's like, I have never heard that before. I can't explain what that is. So that was really cool to have him there to experience that, to be like, okay, it's not a loon, I mean, it was so loud. And between us and where the sounds were coming from, it was open. There wasn't trees. I mean, it was open. So that sound was just carrying. And like Rick said, he had his audio recorder in his pocket, catching all of it. And then to wrap
and just to what we heard, just jump in. So there were three syllables they kept saying, and one was ooh, he, like Hee, and hua. And what's fascinating about that, we've listened to it over and over, is really things in nature. And I've phonetically dove into this, but animals in nature can't make that H sound. Okay, we as humans can, but animals typically can't. Birds and mammals, they don't make that H sound. So that was a puzzle. The other thing is, we went back the next day, and on each side of the bridge, this wasn't far either. It was less than 100 yards to where we heard this. You could see in the tall grass where, exactly as Han said, on both sides of that bridge where these creatures had been down in there. You could see the marks in the deep grass where they had been rooted right in the mounds of grass right there, and were yelling at us. So we found proof that there too.
It was basically like a deer beds, everything was matted down. But so when we got back that night to the campground, I mean, it's late at this point. It's 3 a.m., 3:30 or so. We got around the fire, and we're all just excited, that we just experienced this, and we're all excited, and sat around the fire and had a couple beers, and Rick and I were talking, and we were like, I don't just believe, because that's all you had ever heard is I believe, I know, Bigfoot's around. I know. And then I think it was Rick who said, he was like, Squatch, and he's like, I know Squatch. And we thought it had a really funny ring, like instead of I know squat, you don't know squat. Well, I know Squatch. And that is the birth of the brand.
I love it. It's a great story.
And there's a lot of folks out, you see Believe all the time, and you see these two-dimensional depictions, black silhouette of Bigfoot and everything. We try to do all original artwork, and we try to portray it, and what reflects how hunters may see it or people see it. So that's what's behind this. But that night was a religious experience. We got folks in our group. We were all kind of watching this forested area and this white limestone road going into it. And two of the guys in the group saw one cross the road, right at that. And I'm not exaggerating. There were so many of these things leaning out of the woods over the limestone road in the dark, we couldn't see the road. And we saw them off the other side of the pond between some tall pines. They were streaking back and forth between there. There goes one, there goes one, there goes one. Yeah, it was a shocking thing, because we saw so much shadow movement, so much. We found prints the next day. We found where they were. We recorded them. We saw the red and the white eye shine repeatedly. We were able to gauge how tall some of the eye shine was, because there was a sign on the other side, like a standard, I should see a yellow square sign on the other side, just that said for anybody crossing that the bridge is upcoming. And these things were up much taller than that. We could see the eye shine was so much higher than that. That thing was like 5 feet off the ground, 6 feet off the ground. So we knew they were big and tall. We could tell that was well over 7 feet. So there's an awful lot of things that came together in that experience that make it's, as Han said, we know.
When you say you went and saw like footprints in the beds, how big are these? Like when you say like the deer bed size, or like did you get actual footprints in the grass that you're like, wow, like this is
I'm in the grass.
Yeah, you could see the imprints down in the grass where the foot, the size of the indentations were down in the grass.
I would say that the deer bed, what looked like a deer bed, was, I mean, it was 8 by 8.
Oh wow.
And the grass was chest height on me. So
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was all pushed down, and like you could see where the legs had been down in it and had been matted down. So there could have been more than one on each side of the bridge.
yeah,
Like they were all kind of in a group there yelling over at us. Like, don't we all had in our mind, this is gonna sound weird because people talk about mind speak and stuff, but around these things, we're all said to each other, what are they saying? And everybody said, well, they don't want us to go. They don't want us to go. We all got the impression that don't go, don't go. Now, I don't know how that happens across 5 people simultaneously, but we all interpreted "woo he wah" to mean, don't go. And
it was very
that's
friendly.
Yeah.
It was very calming. I mean, you hear a lot of stories of terror in the woods and all that. This was it was the opposite of that. And I know the next morning we were telling the big group at breakfast, and we had said that, and there was this old timer sitting there, and he was like, no, be real careful. You're giving, Bigfoot, you're giving him human emotions. And I had never thought of that, one. And then I thought, well, we're just describing how we felt.
Right.
We're not saying that, oh, he wanted us to come hang out. No, it was like we felt that this, and I consider myself really lucky to have had that experience, because I've had a lot of nothing out in the woods as well, more so than that. I mean, I've had a lot of times in the woods where it's like you're just walking, enjoying it, but no activity. So that was really special.
That's good. No, those are nice. When you say Ohiwa, to me, and then I look, you're in the northern Michigan Peninsula area. I think, both the Ojibwe, you have the Ojibwe and Cree languages in that area that come from, they have a lot of syllables and J's and H's and A's and W's when you break them down. And not only that, when I learned, because my tribe, the Little Shell Chippewa out here in Montana, when we're learning Chippewa or learning Cree, they talk about how a lot of times it was sung to you, so like that they would kind of sing the phrases to each other, just based on the language and how it is said and written. And it's also a good way to remember it. And I wonder, you do get, like you say, sometimes you do get those native connections. I've never met a native that doesn't have an opinion on Bigfoot, because like it's somewhere along the line, the hairy cousin in the woods, you go to the tribes in Washington, and just the way, like, no, he's here, like they recognize it. They don't, it's almost like, you don't believe, like, who are you? Like, I live here, like I know better. And you get that. And like, I know you're talking a very remote part of the country, in the Upper Peninsula there. And I could just see it. And I can visualize and feel it. I'm like, yeah, I believe it. Another question I did have when you brought up in the story, for our listeners, is when you say they paralleled you, what does that mean?
So yeah, I'll jump in, and because I've experienced it. I experienced it 3 weeks ago in the mountains of South Carolina, actually. But they'll, a lot of times, if they're around, instead of jumping out in front of you in a pathway or sometimes I saw one in Colorado step onto a pathway behind us, but I saw one crawl across the path, but they'll, instead of crossing perpendicular to your motion, if there is a way that they can stay abreast of you in the woods, they will. And they will be in the woods, keeping a little bit of a distance, but going along with you as you go, sort of thing. And it can get creepy. I mean, it can be loud sometimes, it can be really stealth, and all of a sudden they're there. But when we talk about paralleling, especially if they want you out of an area, they will be there, sometimes on both sides of you, and usher you out of an area or trail to get you out of an area. Maybe that's an area they have, they habituate, they live in, they have family. But if they don't want you there, they're going to get close. And, then they do things like push trees down, throw rocks, etc., anything that gets you feeling unsettled and to leave. But they will follow and parallel with you all the way out.
Nice.
Hey, Zach, what you said about the native language and then the missing of it, I had never heard that. And I'm like, man, that makes the story even better. It really does.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
No, it really is. I do some with the Little Shell Tribe. We've been restoring their language and helping. I've helped film and record for the app and whatnot that they use. And the language lady, she was saying, yeah, this language is in a way almost sounds better too if it's sung. Like when you sing it, like the words they flow a little bit more together, because like you have 3 I's, 4 J's, 8 W's, and an A and this and that all in one word, and it's just, that's dog. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy when you really look at like the Ojibwe language. You're just like, oh my god, like I don't want to learn this. Like it's.
I'll tell you, I love this topic. I'm glad you came back to it, Hans. Zach, we ought to do a podcast just talking about this, because I think there's an awful lot of parallels. Correct me if I got the wrong number, but Native American tribes, I think there's about 23 or something, 24 in the country, something. They all have a name for Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah.
And as you said, that it's not like, should we believe it doesn't exist? It's just a matter of fact. That struck me once in British Columbia. I met with some Native Americans, and they talked to us like, of course we know where it is. We know where it exists. We know where they give birth. And they told us in the Harris Lake area. So I would like to explore this further. I'm in Western North Carolina. I get out on a lot of things here, and I get lucky enough to interact with a lot of people. It's Cherokee around here, but it's the same thing. Acknowledgement is given. A lot of the signs or symbols you see, I think, have some bearing on the stick structures in the woods. So particularly the X. X in Cherokee means friend. I've had these things lay an X down on a trail right next to us when we were in the woods. There is something going on that parallels or is part of Native American culture, communication, language, etc. that relates to Bigfoot. And I'm convinced.
Right. No, and then you have a lot, like you said, the language, like Sasquatch comes from the Salish word of, meaning the hairy man in the woods or the Bigfoot. It really, yeah, no, I agree. I think we should talk more about this, because there is a lot you can go with. When we went to the Bigfoot conference in last year, me and Matt, when we went out there just for something to do, the Vancouver Island, this guy came down from down there, and just the way he talked about, like, you just go up there and you'll see him almost, and it's crazy, and just the stories you hear, and it's weird how that, to me, it's almost more spiritual in a way when you look at it, on how it's almost when you talk it, it's almost the same way you talk about like your culture and your traditions, right? Like it almost falls into that realm. There's more of a respect around it, because it is almost, you do get other people like, oh, you're crazy, and I think that's partly why it's brought up that way, because it is there was that connection at some point. Now, do we have it anymore? Probably not. But at one time, there was this connection, and you really take it back in history. And I like to look at like the Bible or the other books, and you look at like we all lived with the animal in harmony, you know, whether it's native culture, white culture, Asian culture, right? They all have these stories that go back to we all lived in harmony at one point. And I feel like there's different places on this earth personally that have changed, you know, where it's like native culture, it was one of the last places that that harmony was taken away from because of the rest of the world. And you look at that and it's just kind of crazy and how we've manipulated that over time. And you take something like Bigfoot, which is kind of fun and it's used for fun, especially nowadays in modern days, but what that where that traditionally rooted from. And there is a lot there in native culture.
You know, just one other thing. If you have you read or are you aware of 50 Years Living with Bigfoot, a book by Janice Carter Coy and Mary Green? Have you right? Well, so it's written from experience in Tennessee and family that grew up around these things, but there's multiple pages in that of Bigfoot language and multiple pages in there of what's derivative of Lakota Sioux, but has local Native American speak language in there. And the parallels, I'd love to have you take a look at. And even the phonetics and the way that, you know, what they say, the term for friend is knock, has a NAWK sound to it. But you would see all these things in that language. Everything you said about the extra consonants and the way a lot of that exists in Bigfoot.
I will. I'll take a look at that. Yeah, there's one called Tribal Bigfoot, which focuses on the tribes in Northern California that I've read.
Yeah, I've read that too. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of, I want to jump back to these expeditions that you guys, because most of the stories that I've heard, all the activities out at like night, and so I'm curious about like when you're in the daytime when you're scouting these areas or getting in there, is it just you're out there with your headlamp, going through kind of when you're at the location and you're trying to figure where you're going to go at night, like how's that planning into it?
You want to start, Hans, or you want me to get it started? Or
Can you repeat the question?
So essentially, I'm curious because most of the stories I've heard are at night, and so I'm curious, like, what goes into the daytime scouting of an area, if you're doing any kind of daytime scouting of an area.
Okay. Well, you can talk specific to like BFRO outings, or you can, or if you're just out with your buddies, there's a group of us in Wisconsin. There's like 5 of us that go out, all the time. And I think what you do during the day, I mean, that is setting you up for the night. And it's super important. The good thing about when you go on a BFRO outing or expedition is that they've done all that legwork prior to you getting to the location. So they know the trails, they know the area, so during the day you're trying to figure out, hey, what are we going to do tonight when we go out? And you're always hoping for like the class A road crossing. You're driving a lot of, logging roads, or you're getting out and you're walking into areas. So what you do during the day, is crucial to what you want to do at night, because when you're out at night, everything closes in, your distance goes way down. You can't tell where a ridge line is. I mean, especially depending on conditions as far as moon and stars and everything. So what you do, does that answer kind of?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I just, if for the casual person, I think they have this idea. It's like, all right, we're at camp, it's night, let's go this trail type deal. So I imagine that that's not how it is. And so I was just kind of curious the thought into it.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I think some of what Hans said is great, because when we're looking during the day at a place that we're going to visit at night, we're trying to find spots, even trails that you're walking. Now, typically we're in an area that has had some activity, road crossings or homesteads that have had interaction with them. And, we could be camped in a state park or a private campground and then drive miles to get to, wooded area going way back into the woods. And as Hans said, logging trails or fisherman trails, hunting trails, that sort of thing. Or where there's some primitive campsites, but we're looking for spots we can be viewed. That's number one. So get to a spot, remote back in the woods, takes you a while to get there, and then maybe build a fire, and people are never there, that kind of thing. You want to be at a spot where you can maybe you're at the base of a ravine, and all around you is an amphitheater in the woods, so they can come if they hear you and they're curious, because these things are eternally curious. They can come down the ridge, over the top of the ridge, down the ravine, hide behind a tree, look at you, see what you're doing. You always got to give them the advantage, give them a chance to see you. And that's what we're looking for that on trails we visit during the day. Where are some spots? And a good idea, if you switchbacks that go up, a mountain, you get in the elbow of those switchbacks. And there's typically a ravine above you. A lot of times there's caves up in that ravine, etc. And these things will come down there. They'll be in there during the day. I've been in that situation where they are there and they're watching, and they will go to those or frequent those areas because they can come down. There's more vegetation in the elbow in a ravine right inside. They'll come down that, and there's water there. They're always around water, but they can see you. They can get up close to you without you knowing it. So give them a chance to approach you is what we look for during the day. We're always looking for water. We're looking for game trails. They follow game trails, and we look for stick structures, things like that. If we catch a print or see a print during the day, and that's happened to me in daytime scouting, we're back there at night. You can bet on that. So, there's things we do look for after we make it more finite into an area that's had activity.
Would you say a lot of the BFRO is more, I guess, and the question is it more on public or private land, have you found? With like these sightings being like, because I understand there's some like private land areas where people just don't touch their land. It's got caves on it, it's got that on it. So like it is harder for like the public to go see, but when these expeditions have the opportunity and the funds to get into those areas, like, are you noticing, I guess, more success? Or I guess I'm curious on that, the private public.
Yeah, well, we'll camp on private sometimes, but then access public a lot at night. And nobody's deep in the woods at night. And if you go to a national forest area, I don't care, pick a map and look. The areas that people walk on trails during the day is a small percentage of, the actual forest. And we'll go back into places, and we're looking for logging trails, like Hans said, or trails that go to old homesteads and stuff. And we look for those during the day. We're back at that at night, and we're parking, and we're going back up in areas that, look for, those red gates. You guys know what I'm talking about. When you're out in the woods, you see those red gates that are on some forest road. We go to those suckers, and then we're back in there into the woods all the time.
Wow. Okay. So it's just kind of where, and are you getting more so the reports of like this area has high activity and that's why we're going here? Or I guess what helps make that decision too?
Well, you can on if you go to bfro.net, you can see down to the county, the most active counties. So that narrows it down, and then we look at the state and federal forested land in there, and then we're looking for waterways. Wherever the waterways draw on a map, you typically Bigfoot seem to aggregate around. They need water, and they will follow the waterways. You could bet on that, and they're always in groups. They're never singular. So that's kind of the process we go through in trying to get there. So we're not necessarily looking for a campground where they can come in to the campground. That's, as some folks try to do that, but that's not necessarily the goal. I like going and put yourself in a spot where they can come and approach you and not see what the heck you're doing, because you're in a spot that people are never in, kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, the curiosity, like you say, it makes sense. It makes sense because they are curious creatures.
Now kind of on the not so not BFRO expedition, but if you're going out with 4 or 5 of your friends, are you using the same kind of like strategy where you're taking that BFRO map counties, you're seeing there are a lot of activities, or are you kind of going more so like, I've never really camped in this part, so why don't we just go up and maybe we'll see some sort of activity?
I would say yes. you're looking at maps, go online and look at maps. Of course, look for anywhere where activity has been reported through the years, but then look at some topo maps and see the water sources and the majority of that we do is all public land. I wouldn't go out there and trespass onto anyone's private land just because you don't know what's going to happen. But so that's when we go out in our small groups, that's what we do.
Nice.
Or there's certain areas. There's in Wisconsin, there's 3 or 4 areas that we continually go back to in different parts of the state because we know that there's activity there, and it's been there throughout the years. So, and it's just always fun to just go camping with your buddies.
Right. There's a lot of good things that you hit with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll throw something else in because Hans and I have been on a few of these together. But I recall one we were in, I won't give out where, but it was in the central western Wisconsin where we were hiking one night and we were on public and they crossed some private on a road.
You're going to talk about this story?
Remember, we were coming downhill and we got and these trucks showed up and these guys, I think they were deer hunting at night with flashlights or something. Man, were they peed off at us. What the heck are you guys doing? And jumped out of a truck. They were mad. We were on this road, crossed through their land. Here we are. Of course, we're telling them we're, Audubon Society and we're out looking for birds and all this kind of stuff. Can't tell them what you're doing. I didn't believe a word of it. And they were mad. And I can't repeat it, but and they isolated us. They isolated Hans, had him in the front of one of the trucks. You stand here, and you guys over there. And oh God, here we go. The guns are coming. It was not good.
He had said so. What happened was the first truck that came. It was the 2 sons. So then they took off. They went back and they got Dad. Dad showed up, and he pulled up with his window down. And it just so happened that the group split up and I was isolated on one side. And he what the hell are you doing? And I'm sure he owned the land on either side of the road, but we were on the road. But I'm not going to argue that that's public. And anyways, as he's yelling, I thought, naturally, I'm going to approach him. And he's sitting in his truck. And he was just, don't you move one step closer. And he was kind of like this. And I was probably one of the scaredest I've been. And it was terrifying because he's unpredictable, very unpredictable.
Especially in those cases where you are supposedly crossing on their land. But even then, like, I get what you're saying. There's so many of those out, especially out here in Montana, where you have the checkerboarded, like, here's state land, here's ranch land, here's this. Yes. And that road, the reason that road is there's 2 ruts in the ground is because you have a right to access that state land. And I get it. I can put myself in your shoes and just worry because you get out into those country places, man. Those are the people that will shoot sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it brings up a good point. I mean, Zach and Mark, you guys are out in the woods all the time, and we're out in the woods at night doing this, and you try to scout during the day, but the nuts come out at night, and you never know who you're going to run into in the woods, and you got to be careful. I mean, for all your listeners, folks out there, I was out in Kentucky a month and a half ago. We had two guys approached us back in the woods. They walked hundreds of yards to get to us. And they were drunk on moonshine, but they're also scared out of their mind. And they said, why are you guys down where our campsite is? They were staying overnight to fly fish. And we said, we weren't there. And they said, you've been here all night. And they're scared. They said, somebody was down running our campsite. And we've been in that area the night before. It wasn't us. I know what it was because we were in that area the night before and we saw red eye shine and saw something leap over a boulder. Now, this is we were hundreds of yards away from that spot next night, but these 2 guys, I think they had Bigfoot encounters where they were. They thought it was us, but, they came up on us in the dark in the middle of nowhere and they were scared. So you never know who you're going to run into at night, and
Well, exactly.
I felt
Run into a black bear, a grizzly bear, a mountain lion. They're more nocturnal nowadays, Like, if you think about it, those animals, they'll like I'm curious if you guys even have had one of those encounters with like a bear or a mountain lion or something that while you're looking out because you are at night.
yeah, I
Uh,
was on Hans, were you on the one expedition we did? This was in UP also. And they who got on, was it Don got on the walkie-talkie at one time, the guy that's the prison guard up there, and he had everybody, nobody move, because he on the therm he picked up a mountain lion in the middle of the groups. Were you on that one?
no, I was gonna say I've never had a mountain lion experience. Black bear, yeah, um, which is less scary, I believe, than a mountain.
Mountain lion's on top of my list of like
Right?
Mhm.
they'll stalk
Yeah.
you. They're a cat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some really, really strange uh coyote experience. Where like a huge pack of coyotes that are in this dark. That was the night that we were in the field, Rick, and
Yeah, yeah.
we heard an Ohio howl. So I'm sure you guys that long Ohio howl, and then all of a sudden the coyotes went off, and when they went off, and it was like it was being explained to me that by our buddy Mike that coyotes in a pack, they're actually split up and they have like a sentry of the coyote and they're talking to each other, and they went on for an hour. And
Wow.
it was very aggressive. And that was the first time I ever thought, I wonder what a pack of coyotes would do. Because you think, oh, coyotes, they're so skittish, they're just gonna run. But
Right.
a pack of them,
Yeah, you only
Yeah.
see like one or two, maybe. You only see really one ever.
Right.
right,
It's crazy.
right.
That's
Yeah, we've had
wild.
them come in. We've had them come in, and what Hans points out for your listeners, I mean, there's times when you're out and you'll hear this single long 7-8 second late crescendo come down howl, and it's not a coyote. It's way more powerful. It hangs in the air. If go listen to the Ohio howl. Look that up online if you want to hear what this is. But you'll hear that. Then there's a gap, and then all of a sudden the coyotes chime in, and they all step on each other as they vocalize. And you can see the difference. But if the Bigfoots are moving, the coyotes tell the forest. And if these things start, the Bigfoots start moving and they're around, the coyotes start to. It's not that they panic. It's like they go on alert and they start, and they come around. They'll come around us. They get close. They'll parallel you, and it gets creepy. It gets creepy like you wouldn't believe. Not that I think coyotes are all going to jump out on mass and attack us, but man, sometimes they're really close and they're agitated because the Bigfoots are moving.
Makes sense. They probably get eaten by Bigfoots, I could imagine.
Well, actually, I think so. I think it's the other way around. I think they have a symbiotic relationship, almost a relationship where their job sometimes is to alert the Bigfoot. I also think the same is true for barred owls. And I could go on with that topic for a podcast. The barred owls will alert the Bigfoot when we're moving through the woods. And Bigfoots will mimic and make barred owl sounds. And there is a relationship there between them, coyotes, barred owls, and Bigfoots for sure.
Interesting.
Interesting. Unfortunately, though, we'll have to save that for another time because we are actually getting to the end of our time here talking today. So it's time for the final words. Hans, since it is your first time being part of the final words, how it is you can plug literally anything you want. You can say literally anything you want. If you have a poem you want to share, if you have like a PSA, you have anything coming up, it's yours for it. But since you're the first timer here, we'll let you go first. So final words.
Okay. Check out this sweet new hat I'm wearing. That is our design. Notorious Bigfoot, a play on Notorious B.I.G. and Squatch. We did it like 2 years ago. Then we kind of left it alone. And I just got some hats embroidered with it. If you go to Etsy, if you shop Etsy, just punch in, do a search on I Know Squatch, and you'll be able to find beanies, all kinds of beanies. And yeah, you'll be able to see our brand crest that Zach is modeling.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for having us on. It's a pleasure. And I really liked my story, and then it was added to by what Zach had said about the Native American thing. I mean, that's awesome.
That's terrific.
Yeah, Rick, final words.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys, Zach and Mark, for having us on and redoing the episode. Look forward to doing a few. It seems like there's more we got to talk about, so we got to do some more of these later this year. So let's try and commit to that, because time goes fast when we're talking about this. You guys are great, and appreciate the support for I Know Squatch. Let's continue to find things we can do together as the year goes on. For your listeners, stay tuned. We might have some tricks up our sleeve. And we'll be at conferences starting. The Bigfoot conferences start in April. We'll be at a new one called Encounter Quest, and that's south of Charlotte, southeast of Charlotte, and Hamlet, North Carolina. That's new. I just saw a speaker lineup for that too, and they've got some good folks coming. I think Ron Moorhead's one of the speakers. And we'll be in Ocala, Florida, at the third annual Florida Bigfoot Festival. That's coming up, and that's in April also. I think that's let me check. I think that's third week of April. So April 22nd. So we'll be at that too. So, and then Gatlinburg, there's other ones this year. We've got a lot coming up. We should put that on probably in the Etsy store, just let people know that everything we got upcoming, but we'll be selling merchandise and presenting, talking, and all being a part of that. And if come on by, I'll give out free copies of the lyrics to Wood Booger Walk if people come out by and say hi.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah,
Oh, I forgot. Check us out on Etsy or on Instagram and
Instagram.
Facebook.
Facebook, yep.
Yep, on our Instagram. I'm always pushing our shows. Where we're going to be. Just go on there. You'll see our list of upcoming events.
Yeah, no, I definitely.
We'll have this wonderful hat too here. That's a new hat we had in November. It did very well for us too. So yeah, we'll always make a shameless plugs for the merch.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Mark's always making shameless plugs too.
Yeah, no, there's no shame. It's not a shameless plug. It's just a plug. Final word, Zach.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we were able to redo this episode. Got lost. It's another one. Our first Christmas episode with our good friend Yolo from Uganda, Africa, we did. The second half of that interview was also lost. So,
yeah.
So there's an archive of Wandering Ways episodes out there that the listeners, I'm sorry, they're there, but we don't know where they went. They were great conversations, but that's all right. It gave us time to talk today, which is always good. It's always good to talk and see what we have coming forward. Because I know we're going to have you guys back on in the new year in 2023 a couple times and talk about some cool Bigfooting experiences. I know, like you said, you just had an experience 3 weeks ago. You can have one in 5 months ahead from now, and then we'll talk about it. Who knows, man? I'm excited. Maybe Mark will have another Bigfoot experience in the time to come. That's what's so great about 2023. Me and Mark, we actually booked a trip to Iceland in June. So I'm not sure if there'll be Bigfoots there, but we always will be looking for Bigfoot. We always review it on our reviews on our trips. So we'll let you know. But Mark, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, love it. Reverend's final words of wisdom. Thank you guys again for coming back on. I really kicked myself over having my computer just absolutely kaput on me because that one was an absolute blast. So I'm really appreciative that you guys were able to come on. And it's just as good, if not better, this time around. So I enjoyed talking with you guys. Love hearing the stories. I'm on the edge of my seat on some of these stories when you're hearing about these experiences because they're just so cool and everything. So just closing it out, make sure you do check out I Know Squatch on Etsy. Make sure you check out I Know Squatch Instagram, Facebook. We'll have it in the episode description, links to that. check out Rick's song, Wood Booger Walk. We'll probably have
Yes,
that
Rick.
linked in the description too. So they're great guys. Thank you so much for coming on. And with that being said, peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.